Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. Recently, I can't remember which issue it was. It was to do with in the 70s of 80s. Oh, it was blood transfusions, wasn't it? That gave a lot of children HIV, AIDS, and other diseases, and that scandal that's going through the courts. And obviously, there's the vaginal mesh issue. There was a breast implant one as well, and obviously at the moment the Primodos. That's the one I'm going to play you from Sky News. The thing, when people say, pharmaceutical companies or medical institutions like the NHS or GPs or doctors, they won't lie to you. They won't mislead you. They won't do bad things for you because they're looking out for your health. That's the reason they do it. And we believe this, and then these scandals come along. There's just the moment there's 4 of them, but the interesting thing about this one is the level of things that didn't happen. And yet, if you'd gone to your GP and said, "Is Primodos safe? Is vaginal mesh safe? Are breast implants safe?" I can't remember what the other one was, but the GP would have said, yeah, it's perfectly safe. And if you'd questioned it, he probably would have laughed at you and said, well, you don't know what you're talking about. All these things that now are coming out as having these problems were once told to you being safe. And also to do with medication as well. We all know that if you look at actually the leaflets that come with them when they do the trials, there's lots of complications that come from taking these medications. But GPs and doctors, they don't like to sort of highlight those ones too much. If you ask, is it safe? Yeah, they say, it's well tolerated and this, that and the other. But it's got a list as long as your arms, often including death, that these medications can give you. So we often forget that these things aren't, this wonder drug. Anyway, listen to this.
We met married, had children. I often wonder if it hadn't been for Primodos, I'd be a grandmother by now. I'd look quite pretty.
Nikki's mum was given the drug Primodos as a pregnancy test. It was made up of 2 pills, which would induce a period in women who were not pregnant. However, many families believe if the mother was pregnant, it could damage or even kill their children in the womb. The proposed legal action follows a Sky News investigation, where we found documents in German archives showing manufacturers were warned by UK regulators that those using the drug had an increased risk of malformations. And those records from that study appeared to have been deliberately destroyed in order to frustrate future legal action. Lawyers say that early warning signs were ignored and the drug wasn't tested before sale.
They placed the drug onto the market without any prior toxicology testing. Now, I find that quite astonishing, given that this is a pregnancy test that was given to women and it had no therapeutic benefit whatsoever.
A previous claim by UK families, including Nikki's parents, was abandoned in 1982, and a government review published in 2017 found that there was insufficient evidence to show a causal association between the drug and birth defects. But last year, an Oxford University team produced an analysis of all the significant studies relating to Primodos and found the drug was associated with a doubling of the risk to an unborn baby.
It's a hugely important risk. And once you're talking about the more specific ones, like congenital heart disease, neurological defects, they're up to double, threefold. We're not just saying there's individual studies, there's a consistent effect. And what's interesting is when you look at the higher quality studies, you go, there's even more of an effect. A doubling of the risk is catastrophic.
Recipients of the legal letters include the UK government for failure to protect patients and German pharmaceutical giant Bayer, who now own Schering, the manufacturer of the drug. Both say that the Oxford study has been deemed unreliable by the European Medicines Agency, and there's been no new evidence since the previous trial in 1982. Bayer told Sky News, "We believe this action to be without merits and will defend our position vigorously and, if necessary, in court." Bring it on, say campaigners.
I acknowledge the mistake that they've made in the past, put it right, and then moving forward to ensure that they don't have it happen again.
The 200 plus alleged victims have waited all their lives for this. If successful, the class action could cost millions in damages, but it's hard to put a price on a life changed from birth.
Well, Jason is here. Why are they taking this action now then, Jason?
Well, it's an interesting question because back in 1982, this case failed. It was sort of dead in the water. I think a number of things have happened over that period of time. First of all, the children grew up. So they suddenly looked and sought answers for themselves and found some of these studies, went and researched in some of the archives. We helped out as well and did some research and found new evidence, new concerns about the way the drug was regulated and studies that had been done in the past that seemed to show a risk. I think the really key thing now is this study in Oxford that seems to have collated all of the evidence, and when everything is pooled, it seems to suggest that there is a clear association. Why now? How has it, lasted all this time? I think really you have to put it down to sheer bloody mindedness of the campaigners. They have stuck at it and stuck at it and stuck at it. They've looked at every little angle of this, and they've finally managed to put together what they feel is a strong case. It's taken a long time, but by pulling together experts, people like Neil Vargason, who I saw you speaking to half an hour ago, who did the tests on fish, they've slowly put together a case. It has taken an awful lot of time, and they're not through it yet. And there's, at the same time, a government review, Baroness Cumberledge, looking at the evidence as well. That will come back in around November, December time. But whatever happens from that review, this legal action will now be a battle of scientists, if you like, to see who can put forward the most convincing argument.
Their work and yours continues. Jason, thank you.
Now, what's amazing about that is, and just remember that the people that you heard defend that are still producing tablets that you're probably ingesting, and maybe some of them are. I'm not saying don't take tablets. That's your own choice, and but the fact is that the truth of the matter, there are these, like you couldn't see the lady, she was disfigured, and you could see, or you could hear that she struggled to communicate. Wow, the way that they used the term "her life had been changed," I think is was an understatement. It seemed like the news were gatekeeping it slightly. Her life had been destroyed. So the fact that you have people with, physical manifestations, that you can see that something went wrong, and this is something that their parents took while they're inside them, and there's evidence, and the fact that there was no test done, and yet still Bayer will come out and say that this study is without merit because they have a government study or another studies that show that this link wasn't there, and I suspect. I mean, the real thing is when the question was asked why, and he talked about the bloody mindedness, he went the wrong angle. I don't know why he went that angle. The fact is, if you believe the Oxford study is true, that means that other people were lying, that they were covering it up, that they probably paid people in the scientific community and government agencies to hide this thing in a time in the 80s where it was easier to do this kind of thing. Whereas now it's not, because there's freedom of information and we can all get all this information. But that aspect is not really looked at, the fact of that trust issue that's gone there. And this is just one medicine. But it just worries you about it just shows up the pharmaceutical companies, and what they're really interested in is money and not health. Otherwise, they would take this Oxford study and say, okay, is it true? Let's test it. Yeah, it's true. Well, then let's pay out these people then, because we bought up that company, so we have to take that duty. Take care. Thank you. God bless and peace.